culture in general. So if what I have there is that if we don't intentionally create culture in our work, the culture will create itself. And sometimes we may end up with a culture that we don't want and we don't like. So it is important to be intentional about the cultures that we're working in and really work through that so that, we live in our work in a way that is happy, joyful, and according to our values. So what today we are going to address mainly is how do we create that intentional culture and what are the things that keep us from going into that intentional culture. Research for this, I really came up with 3 blocks of areas where we see symptoms of issues in an organization. There are symptoms and at the same time, there are causes of a toxic relationship at work. Let's start with communication issues. So, number 1, gossip and rumors. What is so funny about gossip is that everybody thinks that gossip is bad, but everybody likes gossip a little bit, right? There's something about gossip that is like tempting. So if somebody comes and tells you something that nobody else is supposed to know, you feel kind of like very unique and I'm special. I'm the person that is being like given this secret. But guess what? Nobody is able to keep a secret either. Gossip and rumors are, one of the most damaging kind of things that an organization can have. And it's kind of the second truth running under the table. And to be truthful, I don't know if you ever played that telephone game in which like people make a line, and every time you pass on the information, it feels and it sounds differently. So by the time it gets to the 5th person, the story even looks different. But it is a sign and a symptom of an organization that feels that they can't speak openly about what's going on. And also it may be some personalities. Maybe in some organizations you can speak openly, but we still got the gossip and rumor because some people just function that way. They are used to doing that, but it's very damaging. Indirect communication, and I'll explain now what indirect communication means with the other pieces. Indirect communication means that you are not telling the person directly what you need to tell them. You are using other ways of telling people this way. For example, you are asking someone else who is more likely to say yes for permission for something they don't have authority for, right? You need to get an expense through in your budget or something like that. And you know that your boss is going to tell you, no, we don't have the money. You may go around that person and go directly to the finance person to get the approval. So those kind of things, is something called indirect communication. And what they cause is confusion. Also, not saying what you really mean. And we use that a lot in this area as well. I call it the Fairfield County kind of communication. Because you gotta be like so correct on how you say things that sometimes you can't say what you mean. And that doesn't ensure that you will be able to, get the other person to understand what you really mean. That is damaging as well. Telling someone else to communicate a message for you versus telling the person yourself. I have many examples of that. And when you are a manager, especially, you are put in that place a lot. You have an employee who is not able to talk to someone else, and they come to you, so you talk for them. So that's something kind of a red flag that is important to figure out when you're working with people, and really encourage people to speak to one another. Giving a softer message, hoping the recipient will read along the lines. For example, our numbers weren't so good this month, but you, instead of saying that, you say, well, we are doing well. Our numbers weren't fantastic, but when in reality you say you're trying to hide what is really going on. And so people get confused as well. And using nonverbal communication cues, like rolling your eyes, looking at one another when somebody walks along, right? Shaking heads, all that kind of verbal communication skills that we all use. are kind of like bad ways of communicating. There's one more thing I want to add to this, and there is the cultural component. When multicultural teams are very difficult to manage. Although they are great in the sense that we bring different ideas and people with different experiences, they can be hard to manage because people express themselves in different ways depending where they come from. So one example I have, for example, people that are from South America tend to be very assertive at the way they talk. The way they're very like straightforward. We have a lot of Germans down there and a lot of Italians, and that's how we speak. People closer to Central America tend to be softer. So someone that even speaks my same language may be taken back by the way I talk and the way that I say things. So it's very important when we are communicating with our coworkers, try not to be the tone police, because it is very difficult to get different cultures to work together and to express themselves until you get to know that person better. Then you will know that they mean well. But a lot of people speak with different tones and use different words that may mean something different in our culture. And that can be challenging as well. So we want multicultural groups because of all the benefits it offers. But when it comes to communication, we have to be very careful about how we interpret what is being said. Also, if the person is speaking a second language, it can be even more challenging, right? Because their sentences may not be translation may be different. The sentences may be not as complete until they get a better hand of it. So that's just a little parenthesis I want to make on communication, because when it comes to culture, it can be even more challenging in that aspect. But in general, what happens with people is that they just don't want to get in trouble, and they don't feel that there is a safe way to communicate at work. So one of the very important areas to start developing in organizations is that way of communicating, right? And this can be done through exercises, through workshops, through facilitation, in which we learn how to give information to one another. Quick tip, things to use are compassion, understanding. If you have a misunderstanding with somebody, and I'm moving into kind of what I will say in the other presentation we're going to have, but think about that person as a brand new person every day. It really helps. You come in through the door and don't think about what happened yesterday. You look at them with brand new eyes and curiosity. It's really helpful when it comes, especially when you're getting to know people and you have to exercise a little bit more patience than with the people you know.